Hello and welcome to LangTime Chat, episode 5. In how many languages can you say 5?
Oh, wow, that's actually a really good question. Probably a lot. I can say 5 in languages I've never studied, like Korean. Did you know that I was a first-degree black belt in Taekwondo?
I had no idea. Like,
Yep.
I feel like this is information you're supposed to share with friends before you've been friends for 7 years. But okay,
You'd th
that's cool.
you'd think, but again, we are not, friends.
Friends.
And I think that you
Mortal
confirmed that
enemies.
you confirmed that today
Mhm.
when I went to my Instagram and saw news that a family of foxes had visited your house. And your first thought wasn't, hey, let's share this with my friend who loves animals and foxes especially. No, no, no. Let's put this on the gram.
Graham.
And and then let's not even tell him about it. Let's just let him happen upon it as he's going through it. And not only that, you texted me today for an entirely separate reason. You actually
Yes, I did.
texted me, and it was just like, I mean, I can't think that the foxes weren't on your mind. All I can think is that you really despise me.
Holding it over your head. I am, however, I'll share the other 4 photos beyond those 2 that I posted on Instagram. I'll text those to you that I ended up not posting because they're not as good, but I really was too excited to keep my camera steady.
Wow. Well, I
I
guess I
mean,
feel special.
4 foxes. Yeah, you know, I guess you should. I don't know. But actually, it's really funny that you bring up that first, which I do from the bottom of my heart. Apologize for letting all of the gram know when obviously the correct thing to do the moment I had the pictures was text you. I'm
Thank you.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Hmm. Not
Okay,
accepted,
so
but thank you. Thank you.
was the gesture at least semi-appreciated?
It was, yeah, and I think semi-appreciated is the best way to put it.
Awesome. Okay, so when the foxes happened upon our backyard, I was actually in the middle of a very tense phone call because we,
Wow.
Chris and I, were locked out of our SFA accounts, so of our university accounts. And so like our first thought is, oh, they fired us.
Yeah.
they just locked us out and got rid of us. It turned out there was another issue about an email that we had never received or realized that something with the password needed to be changed. But I was in the middle
Respond to
of
this email or you're fired.
that's it. So I was in the middle of talking to the help desk people and, saying what's going on and, telling them about how we had tried to sign in and we've got all this other stuff. We can't access our school email, couldn't access Zoom, couldn't access like anything that we needed our school credentials for. And so in the middle of all this, I happen to look out the window and I shout, "There's a fox in our backyard." And the guy on the other end of the phone said, "I'm not sure what that metaphor means, ma'am." Because obviously he didn't know there was literally. So, like, I'm too excited. I'm like, wait,
Oh,
no, literally, a fox. Then, and then I went to the window and they just kept coming. They kept showing
my
up.
goodness. My goodness. This is when they eventually put together dolls of us, like children's dolls with a drawstring, that'll be your catchphrase. There's a fox in my backyard.
I love it. Also, if it were a metaphor, what would that mean?
Well, would it be something that you would start off a conversation with, or something that you'd respond by saying there's a fox in my backyard?
I feel like it's a response.
Okay, well then I've got it for you.
Wonderful.
Um, uh, ask me a somewhat private question. Go ahead. About
Somewhat.
somebody else. Ask me a somewhat private question about somebody else.
Oh, wow. Oh, put me on the spot. And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
horrible about thinking what would be somewhat private because I'm too Midwestern to think that I would ever actually ask them. So I'm getting embarrassed just thinking about asking you a somewhat private question
I
about
know that
somebody
was
else.
that was part of the point. This is my revenge. Remember, semi appreciated, semi appreciated.
As I'm like kind of hyperventilating, like, I'm not supposed to ask questions. um, okay, so oh, this is a question you should never ask about somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I'm just who should I ask? Oh, I'll just who did Aaron vote for in the last election?
there's a fox in my backyard.
Just
So, but I mean, goodness gracious, Hillary Clinton, come on. But there, I mean, can't even joke about that. But the idea is that when you say there's a fox in my backyard, there is something I'm not telling you that I really want to tell you, but I'm not gonna. And nobody can say that I told you because all I said was there's a fox in my backyard.
I feel like that would be a great one, especially if we were in, in a water cooler chat office situation where, oh, I heard so and so stayed over somewhere by
Mm-hmm.
so and so's house or something. I don't
Yes.
know, something
Mm-hmm.
salacious, and
Yes.
then, well, there's a fox in my backyard.
Woo! But so
That
people know
is
what it
great.
means. Otherwise, they'll be saying, "Wait a minute, he stayed at your house in your
Oh,
backyard?"
yeah, in the backyard. Oh my gosh. So if you
Salaciousness or
can,
salicity?
solicity, who says solicity? And I'm looking
You're
this
right.
up right now.
No,
Is solicity a thing?
no. I think it's a name. It is now. I hope somebody names their daughter Salicity.
Can it, oh, all of a sudden I realize I say salacious. How do you spell it? Oh, it's okay.
Salacious. That is how you spell salacious. Didn't you have that when you went to school? That rhyme?
That exact little clap
Yeah,
and rhyme.
yeah.
No,
That's how we all learn
no.
how to spell salacious, I thought.
Well, remember, Midwestern, we don't talk
Oh,
about such
oh, for us, it was a part of fifth grade curriculum. You know,
things. California people.
yep. Missions, um, and then salacious spelling. That was it, really.
That was I by the way, I still haven't mastered the art of the eye contact via Zoom because I just moved your window over on my computer and I realize I feel like I'm making eye contact, but I'm turning to the side because I'm
Mm,
looking right at you,
that's
but
an idea. That's
I
an
need to
idea.
look at the camera.
I'm gonna center Jesse. Ooh.
And I had moved you over because I was getting ready. I forgot that I needed to open something to go on to what I had actually planned for,
Actually,
the
I
conlang
wonder.
portion.
Speaker view. Look at this. Now you're just full screen.
I'm
Did you know you
sorry.
can do that?
Yes.
Uh, but wait, it can't be full screen because you're recording. But
I think it can be.
then it'll make me small.
Well, I'll have to actually in the
No, it'll make me
recording.
big. It'll make you
Yes.
small.
Well, that's how it already is anyway. On my view, but the actual recording, are you talking about the recording when you see the video portion of these
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
recordings that nobody has
Yeah, yeah,
seen
yeah.
yet?
Yes, yes.
No, it is speaker view. So when I'm speaking, it shows me huge. When you're speaking, it shows you huge.
Oh, I wish I would have known that 4 episodes ago.
That's why I said I didn't think anyone was going to be seeing these, but apparently, maybe someday in the far, far future,
Well,
video footage could be released
so this is
as
this
you
is
hide behind an elephant.
this is Elefante. That's Meridian's. little elephant,
Love
and
it.
his name is now Elefante Elephant.
And
That's his
that's,
last name.
yes, very appropriate.
Yeah. Yep. It's so soft. Like so soft. This is a soft stuffed animal. It's really good. Anyway,
Okay, so
so what do you got?
are we ready? We're talking, you just snapped. I love it.
Mm.
Um, Today, we're talking dictionaries because I love dictionaries.
Ooh.
More specifically, though, because I feel like your particular style of dictionary entries, at least in my knowledge, is unique to you in terms of how you actually format the entries. Am I right about
Mhm.
that, or did you steal your ideas from someone else?
I just assumed I was doing it the way dictionaries do. I mean, I don't know. I evolved it very slowly over
Mhm.
what year is this?
2020.
So over literally 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a yikes. Um, so it's like, yeah, my first language was Meg Davy, and I was like, okay, if I'm gonna write this up in a document, it needs to be in a dictionary. And so I started off by writing the grammar rules such as they were, and then I made a quick reference section so that I wouldn't have to constantly go back to the grammar. And then I
Hmm.
started writing the dictionary, and I of course did it Meg Davy to English, and then English to Meg Davy. Now, my grammar at that time was very small, and I just had them numbered. That was actually inspired by something. So the grammar was inspired by something. That was inspired by Esperanto. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah, if you're not aware of this, if you haven't studied Esperanto, Esperanto's grammar is somewhat infamous for having 16 rules, and they say, that's it, just these 16 rules, and you can speak the language fluently. And it numbers them, and they're really arranged in a rather haphazard way. And some of them, you look at those and say, huh, use an entire number for that rule? Doesn't seemed like it needed one. But anyway, so that's what I did. It was a numbered list of all the grammar things. And I think that like number one is like, the definite article is G, which is what the definite article was in Meg Davy. Because I think that's grammar rule number one in Esperanto too. The definite article is
Oh,
la.
yeah.
Yeah, I think
Um,
so.
I would like to point out, though, that that would have been funny if G was not actually the definite article, but it was just the first rule of McDevie. The second rule was ignore the first rule.
Of course, for my very first language, I took it very seriously. Very seriously.
Sorry, no joking, no joking.
I was the first one to ever create a language for fun. Nobody had ever done that before, ever in the history of the entire world.
I hear that's actually true, and that all of
Yeah,
the people who claim they did it before really had time machines and
it was
visited you.
nuts. It was just
Uh,
Esperanto and Novial and Ro and Occidental and Edo. That was it.
and McDevie,
Then Meg Davy came along and revolutionized the entire world.
everything.
So yeah, I took it super seriously. But yeah, so like that very first dictionary, it was definitely not as well constructed as
Hmm.
mine are now. Same with the language, but that basic structure, I just came up with it because it made sense, and then I kept moving forward. It's kind
Hmm.
of what I had seen in other dictionaries, which is or at least dictionaries with reference grammars, right?
Okay,
Especially the like where it's like you get the beginning, it's like, okay, here's some serious grammar stuff, but like now here's just the tables, right?
right.
So that you don't have to go back to the grammar, and then
Hmm.
long dictionary at the end. So I just copied that.
I think I find it interesting. Well, for the grammar portion, and we can get on that another day. I think the big difference, sorry, there's so much kitchen noise. You hear all that in the background. So if you're listening to this on podcasts, I hope it doesn't make you too hungry. But with the grammar portion, I had always, and I still do whenever I'm creating my own languages, just for fun, separate them out. And so that way I have the cheat sheet charts in one little document, and I only ever have to open that document. And then if I need more information, I can open up the full document and like reference that. Because otherwise the scrolling back and forth, it just seems like a lot. I don't know. So I always had completely separate documents for those. But the dictionary itself, have you ever tried using, because this is how I started, I don't do it anymore and we can talk about why, but had you ever used some sort of spreadsheet, whether it was Excel or number, was it Numbers? Yeah, Numbers is the Mac version. Have you ever used that for your dictionary? Okay,
Never.
so by the way,
Despise
he
it.
held a big thumbs down for that. So
Yeah.
since nobody saw that on the recording, at
Oh,
least
that's
not
right,
yet.
right, right. I have to remember. We're doing audio. We need to do this like Ben Scully. As a matter of fact, he'd never used a spreadsheet for a language before. A curious thing, in 1973, he opened his very first popsicle stand. And in that popsicle stand, believe it or not, he averaged 2 sales a day, but he only sold on Wednesdays. And that's why, when he's batting right-handed, during the day, on Wednesdays, his average is a striking 173. Anyway,
It's the most random thing.
does anybody
But
else know who Vince Scully is? Did I just LA myself?
I think you did, but
Darn.
the voice was wonderful.
Okay. So the thing, oh yeah, so spreadsheets. I was shocked when I started meeting other conlangers and they're like, oh, I did my dictionary on a spreadsheet. I'm like, a spreadsheet? A spreadsheet. So first of all, I mean, you were a Mac person going back, right?
Um, just a second, I have to stop and line up the years. So I converted in 2009. My
Oh,
first
never mind.
language, my first language, I would have been, my first real language that I claim as a real language would have been started before that. So it would have been on a PC. And I use, and oh, this is really going to be funny. I've never been a huge Microsoft fan in terms of their products. And so
Yeah,
even when I had a PC, I didn't buy the Microsoft products. And so I actually did it on, and I can't even remember what the name of it was, whatever the spreadsheet was for Corel. Do you remember the Corel
of
suite?
course. Yeah,
Way back in the day. It's not a thing anymore.
yeah,
But that would have been my original, would have been whatever the spreadsheet was in that program.
yeah. So if you go back to the 90s, when we first got the color Macintoshes, right? Um,
Oh, and those were beautiful. I kind of wish they'd
yeah.
come back, but okay.
So we had ClarisWorks. ClarisWorks was somewhat similar to kind of like Word, but also Corel Draw. Remember that? So it's
Yeah.
like it had a word processor, but it also had a lot of graphic stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and then, it kept on going. ClarisWorks was eventually bought out by Apple and it became AppleWorks. And it was at that time that I think they added a spreadsheet functionality, but it's like I looked at it once and I was like, this is pointless. This looks like something for business. And then I
Mhm.
quickly, never did anything again with it. Then eventually AppleWorks turned into Pages, and that was when they invented Numbers and
Mhm.
Keynote, or they may have come a little bit later because they basically they removed all of the drawing functions, all of the art
Okay.
functions that had been a part of it because it was trying to be like Corel Draw and Microsoft Word that had Paint as part of it, right? So
Right.
they just split those up. And then I didn't think about spreadsheets again until probably a job or something where people were using, yes, that was it. It was when I was working for Central Kitchen. So I was part of the Berkeley Cooperative Association,
Mhm.
where students lived and you did work for the house and got board for reduced rent. Um, so one year I was a part of the Central Kitchen, which buys in bulk food for everybody and then distributes it to the houses. And
Hmm.
so I not only packed orders, but I also worked with Excel for the first time. This would have
Uh-huh.
been 2003, I want to
Okay.
say. And and so yeah, I used Excel and I became familiar with it. And I was like, okay, I understand what Excel is good for. You know, it seems to add things up and things like that. And yeah, I didn't really give it much thought until like later on, somewhere on the conlang list, people are talking about here's the Excel sheet for my dictionary. I'm like, is this a joke? Is this a joke? You're using Excel, the thing that has boxes that are like this teeny tiny little things.
You can
It's
make the
like
boxes bigger.
you can make the boxes bigger. And can you color them? Can you create different fonts and do different font sizes? You can now.
Yes.
You can now. You couldn't then. You couldn't then. What what I it's kind of like, you know, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. The
Hmm.
type of dictionaries that I saw, it was just one word things. Here's my word for this, and here's its equivalent. Here's my word for this, here's its equivalent. Here's my word for this, here's its equivalent.
Right.
There's some author who did a version of the Mandoa language for a book or something.
Okay.
And she's put up the dictionary, and it is an Excel spreadsheet, and it is exactly that. Here's the word, and here's its equivalent. Here's the word, here's its equivalent. It's like, mm.
Okay. So
So
first of all,
show me
I'm
what you
about to
got. Yeah.
show already laughing. I printed out the grammar of my first language as a
You
book.
did?
Yeah,
When?
right here.
Why does it look so good? Like it's got a
Way back
binding and
when.
everything.
Oh, I did one of those like I can't remember what site I used, but it was like Lulu where you print Blurb. It was I don't think Blurb even exists anymore, but like you could submit files and have them printed as books.
Do you still have a copy of it? Another copy?
This is my only copy.
How do we buy it?
Because everybody wants to buy this. I'm not going to
Well,
say it's
I
great. This
do.
is my first real language. So it though, and I'm going to have to like take a picture um, and show, but this is, I did spreadsheet and apparently I'm not as bad as those people that you're complaining about, but this was all formatted with a spreadsheet and like holding it up to the camera
Yeah.
for David to see.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm sure you couldn't see anything, but that's okay. I'll send you a picture later. But what I found helpful about the spreadsheet, and I did more than just like I would want the first word in the cell of the English portion to be the one that like I would potentially think of first,
Hmm.
or just in alphabetical order too. Um, but what spreadsheets allowed me to do was easily sort because this was now I think find features have gotten better whenever you
Yeah.
need to do like a search and find. But one of the things that helped me out was I could choose any column I wanted and say alphabetize this. So that way I could then have automatically in English to, you know, a conlang dictionary because now all the English is alphabetized. Or if I wanted to see like, do I already have this word in the language or a form similar to it, I could like alphabetize it by the conlang entry. So that way I could easily, and then even like alphabetize it by the conlang entry and then say secondary sort by part of speech. So that way I could see like all the verbs together or whatever. Um, and that to me was super helpful in terms of what I was doing then. I think part of what is problematic is if you have any sort of language that would do um, any language that has like a noun class system where you would have potentially 4, 5, 6, 20 words that are related at their core, and you need to keep all that information together somehow. I think that that would not be as easily adjustable in terms of the row layout where it's just one per row. I think you could do it though. And if you had another column just for like, this is a shared base or whatever. But yeah, I did it but then they're harder to share, I've found, because um, I still don't like Excel.
Yeah.
And so I would prefer numbers, but then that also limits like who can. who I can share the document itself with, because not everybody can open a numbers file.
And it doesn't really do much when you print out a PDF. Uh,
No.
the truth is that word processors and spreadsheet programs have gotten better, but neither of them is ideal. The
Hmm.
best dictionary, the best conlang dictionary I've ever seen was Sylvia Sotomayor's, because the truth is that a word processing file and a spreadsheet are both front end, and
Hmm.
and that's not really ideal. Um, Ideally, you should be working with a back end and then get
Right.
whatever type of front end you want. And that's in fact exactly what Sylvia did. She created a database. So her entire dictionary is a MySQL database. Some people say MySQL. I don't. Anyway, so
I
uh,
don't even know what it is. So like the fact that, you know, some people call it this other thing is,
okay, so MySQL is a database. It's a thing where it's like you can create databases that have
uh-huh.
tables that you can give names to, and then they can have
Okay.
data in them. And then you have other things, usually PHP, that tells you how to access the stuff in those tables. This is how WordPress works. So,
Okay.
like, for example, everything that's associated with a traditional WordPress blog, both like a post entry, but also the author, the categories, the tags, all of the date, all of that
Hmm.
stuff, it's just stored in databases. And then there are PHP prompts that talk to a website and say, somebody presses this on the website, goes to the PHP, it says return these values from the database, and then the HTML says format it this way,
Hmm.
okay, and the CSS. So what Sylvia did is she created different tables, not tables, like cells, different tables and cells for the word, it's different forms, it's different stems, parts of speech, the definition, and then tags for every time it's used in a sentence. So that
Wow.
anywhere on her website, if she puts up a translation, you just click on the word, it goes immediately to that entry.
Wow.
And it's all generated dynamically. She didn't write up every single page for every single word. It just is automatically generated. So that's the ideal, because then the information is all over here and you just
Hmm.
create stuff over here to format it. Um, and the closest that we have to that right now is a program called Polyglot. Are you familiar with Polyglot?
Polyglot, no.
Okay, this is something that you're going to want to look up. There's I keep promising the guy, he's released a beta because I wanted to give him feedback on it. But something like MySQL and PHP, blah blah blah, that's all for the web.
Okay.
Imagine if there was something like that that had a friendlier UI that was just for your own personal computer. That's
Which would be
essentially,
amazing.
yeah, that's essentially what Polyglot is. You can define what the parts of speech are and how many of them there are. You can define, like here's your dictionary entry. You can also define extra cells
Right.
because your language might need them. And so this is where, like, the example you brought up with noun classes,
Hmm.
it wouldn't necessarily matter, because you could just create a cell and say this is the root of it, and also
Hmm.
this is what noun class it is, and then you could just bring up everything that was in that root, and it would bring up everything, or everything of a particular noun class, and it would bring all of that up, and so on. And so it's really close to being the ideal conlang software suite. There were just a couple of little things in there that I was hoping to see changed. So I want to work with it, but yeah, high recommend
Hmm.
that.
Okay. Because I know, like I had tried to find resources through SIL, like the
Oh yeah,
shoebox, you know, or the linguistic,
conlangers did use that.
right.
Conlangers did use shoebox for a time.
But I couldn't quite figure out any of their tools that
Me neither.
were easy enough for me to figure out how to use. that made it useful for me. Because if I'm spending, you know, that much time on a learning curve just to figure out how to make an entry, and then I can't necessarily figure out how to access it after I spend all that time,
Yeah.
it wasn't worth it when I could instead be, you know, spending the time on the language itself.
Yep.
And so I wonder, because there was a website that I remember joining, that was
Conlang
for
workshop.
people. That's it. Yes. And
Yeah.
they have a way, I remember they had sort of a way to create information and entries and things like that. But it's still, and I had even like started by like making up just a fake language to stuff to put in there just to see how it worked, to see if it was something that I could use with my students. Because I think that's the number one thing that a lot of my students struggle with too, is how do I keep track?
Mm,
You know, I've got all these handwritten notes, because a lot of even modern students prefer, actually, when they're doing lots of quick notes, they actually prefer to do it all in handwriting on paper. And that's great, but then you've got like
yeah.
these little scraps of paper when you get inspiration, and they're kind of like sticking all over your folder in your notebook, and you're trying to figure out how to get it all together in a cohesive way in a dictionary. And you know, as many times as I try to give advice, it's everybody's brain sort of works differently, because some people do need that sort of
Yeah.
spreadsheet idea of, I have a cell, put information here. Other people do much better with the sort of free-form dictionary entries like you do, just not as, they're usually not as descriptive in terms of some of the, like, you know, the root form and the little numbering system and things like that that you came
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
to be helpful for your purposes. But that's the big thing, is like, how do you make it user friendly in the sense that you can quickly and easily create the entries, but then also user friendly in the sense that you can find what she wrote later on. Um, and that, I feel like it's always the biggest pitfall whenever people ask for help on that. And my answer is usually, you need to find what works for you. Here are some ideas.
Hmm.
See what works. And I have actually, for my own languages, have given up entirely on the glossary that goes from English to the conlang. And here's why.
Ah. Okay.
Because I can just use the find feature, and I can find the
Yeah.
English word in the entry of the dictionary that goes from the conlang to English. So I was like, why am I creating twice as much work for myself, when all I need to do is hit, you know, Command F, and I can find the word probably more quickly than I can scroll through all the pages.
I feel like I still need and want it.
Okay.
It's useful to me to go through the English side, but I mean, I think it may indeed be a relic, because yeah, you're right. Of course, you can always find. But I don't know, sometimes it's just easier and lazier. It's just like, I want a word for this, and I don't actually want to hit Control F. I just want to scroll. So I just go to the English side. I don't
How
know.
long have you been a Mac user?
Well, I've been an Apple user longer than I've been a Mac user.
Okay.
Um, because the first computers that we had were the computers that my mother was allowed to bring home from
Mhm.
school during the summer, and those were Apple IIe's.
That's where I was introduced to computers, because my mom
Mm-hmm.
taught fourth grade, and they had one computer that they gave each classroom, and it was, you know, a huge revolution at the time,
Oh yeah.
especially in small town in rural Missouri. And yeah, it was, I don't remember the model, but it was an Apple computer. And she would bring it home during the summer to try to learn how to use some of the features. And my sister and I were all over that, because we're like, we get to use it. But of
Yeah.
course, it was very disappointing when the first time we turned it on, there was just a blinking green dot, and we had to figure out how to enter the right commands to get it to run anything.
Yeah. So that was a 2E, because they had the green
Okay.
screen. Yeah.
Yeah, with the
So you
little
know.
blinky.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yep.
Well, the reason I just asked that, by the way, was because you said Control F, and really I thought you would have said Command F, but
Well, I always forget that that's what it's called.
because
And
our
I also,
control button does other things.
yeah, it does. Oh, it says command on it now. Did it always say
Mhm.
command? I don't know. It's it's the big fat button that has the indescribable symbol on it.
It's
What
the
the hell is
swirly
that?
square. It's a swirly square.
It's a swirly square. It looks like a square that's taken some psychedelics. You know what I mean? Starting to do that kaleidoscope thing. And
Sure, sure.
it's
I
also the only symbol on the keyboard. I mean, maybe not on a modern keyboard, at least on a traditional keyboard. It's the only symbol on the keyboard that you couldn't type. Like you can't type that.
I
I don't
think
even know
now
if
that
that symbol is a part of Unicode, is it?
I have no idea. What is the option symbol though? Is that something that's normal?
It's just this Alt Option.
Right. So right next to the command, and you see the little
Yeah.
symbol that's like half a weird X, but not a full X. What would you
Oh,
call
oh,
that symbol?
I remember the one you mean. It's not on mine anymore. I don't think they put that on keyboards anymore.
What?
Yeah, it's not on there. It's
What?
just this Alt Option. It doesn't have the symbol anymore.
One moment, I'm checking. I was just gonna. Okay, I have a brand new keyboard from Apple, and mine still has a symbol. I was just
Wow.
checking to make sure. I
Uh,
think you have a
this
defective keyboard.
this laptop is not as new as your new one, I believe.
No, because I just got mine like the other
Okay,
day. So,
I have pulled up the Wikipedia article on the command key. Oh my God, I can't wait. Also known as the Apple key, Clover key, Open Apple key. That's the one I remember. Open Apple.
yes.
Splat key, Pretzel
Splat.
key, Drone key, or Propeller key.
Okay, my favorites are obviously Splat,
Oh my God.
Drone, and Clover. What are your favorites?
Uh, oh, I was immediately drawn to the pretzel key because I think that's very
Okay.
cute, and that
Mm,
it brings it to mind. But it is in Unicode. It is in Unicode.
there
It
you go.
sorry, I was just showing it. It's called a looped square.
Oh, so my swirly square was not far off.
Yeah,
See, you should
and it's
listen to me
way.
more often.
Should I? I mean, if I, it's like if I listen to you, will I hear more about foxes or will I not?
If you listened, then I would know to speak more often.
Oh my, ouch. Okay,
Oh man.
look at this. There's an entire history of this. The development team originally went for their old Apple key, but Steve Jobs found it frustrating when Apple's filled up the Mac's menus next to the key command because he felt that this was an overuse of the company logo. With only a few days left before the deadline, team's bitmap artist Susan Kerr started researching for the Apple's logo successor. Browsing through Symbol Dictionary when she came across the clover leaf-like symbol commonly used in Nordic countries as an indicator of cultural locations and places of interest. Look at this. It's a Swedish road sign,
That's
apparently.
that's amazing. Oh, that makes me even happier for that key.
Wow.
Oh my
But
gosh.
but then why did they use it? It's the official road sign for tourist attraction in Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. And the and the computer key has often been called Fornminne, ancient monument by Swedish Mac users, and Seværdighedsdagbog. No, but this is Danish. You don't pronounce any of those, so it's probably just something like, Severstem by Danish users.
Sure.
Are you familiar with Danish and its Danishness?
No.
Okay, so like they don't pronounce anything. It's like the thing.
So
Everybody is talking about it, like they always talk about how they can't understand Danish speakers, like people from other areas, because I don't know. I get the impression that it's like it's the it's the Scandinavian version of having a really deep rural Texan accent.
nice.
Yeah. So I just get, I guess, like, a whole bunch of consonants just get
just
dropped
get thrown out. Mm.
indiscriminately.
You should hear
Anyway,
some other even deeper Southern accents. Some of them, some of them I still struggle to fully understand. Okay,
oh,
but
by the way, okay, wait, really quick. I think this is going to be worth it. You tell me later if it was. I have a friend, Gail, who's from Iowa, and you remember the movie Napoleon Dynamite when it came out?
of course.
Okay, so there's this one part where I forget what's going on in the scene. It's somewhere towards the middle of the first half of the movie, but Napoleon is there talking to this guy. He's an older guy, and they're just on his land, and he says something that it's like inaudible. Like you have no idea what the heck this guy was saying. Something like,
Mhm.
you know, I was like, what? What on earth did he just say? And it's like, I guess like that was part of the joke that nobody knew what he was saying. But then Gail came and heard him. It's like, oh yeah. He said, actually, we found some Shoshone arrowheads over there the other day. And I'm like, what? How did you understand it? It's like, oh yeah, that's an accent from like around where I'm from. And we were
Nice.
well familiar with it. And it was like, so it wasn't him speaking gibberish. He was just speaking in the accent and doing it correctly because she got it just like that. Extraordinary.
Oh, okay. So going back to dictionaries, because one of the things that one that I like about the dictionaries that you have whenever we remember to actually put entries in, which is apparently an issue sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but it does have all the parts that I wouldn't think of, and there's a couple of two little things. Obviously, the spelling, how it's written, part of speech, definition, like those are standard, and that's fine. It's the tiny details. One thing that I would not have thought of, probably until I was in a situation where it was bugging me, was the rewrite the word if there's any accent marks without any accent marks. And so, like, if you're looking at our Ingala reference grammar, and you're in the E's, you may see like a menu, and then in parentheses, you see it written without the accent mark over the A in that second syllable. And is there a story behind that in terms of or is it really just like I couldn't find terms when I was searching for them because I couldn't remember where the accent mark was or something like that?
Oh, it was me searching for a word I was almost certain that I had. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't remember what it was at this point, but it's like I'm just doing the find and it's like it's not coming up. And I'm like, I know I have this word, but I just couldn't find it. So I just
Hmm.
like, created another word for it. And then I found it later because I was searching either with the wrong accent mark or
Hmm.
without the accent mark, and it just
Hmm.
didn't turn up, which computers are very wonky about that.
Yes.
Sometimes it's like, search for A and it brings up all the A's, including the ones with accent marks, and
Hmm.
then sometimes not. And then sometimes you search for an A with an accent mark, it's like, oh, that's not here. But then there is one there. Like, it's
And you're like
so
clearly
frustrating.
staring at the A with an accent mark.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Forget it. I, because I thought I was like, I'm using this most of the time. What do I
Hmm.
care? Let's just put it in there. I mean,
Yeah.
just to make things easier for me. That's what I love. I love doing things to make things easier for me.
Which I will say, like in the moment, it can be difficult to remember all the steps. And I know sometimes I struggled when when we were working on Manisha and you, and I was doing some entries. And like I couldn't remember all the time, like, oh yeah, I need to make sure I put the little dot to separate, say, like a prefix from the root just to show where the actual root is or things like
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
That to me, like I would still have to look certain things up. And actually, as I'm looking at our e entries,
Oh yeah.
I have found a mistake.
Well, it's not necessarily a mistake. It's I don't know what to do because this is actually a good point because this is about Angala specifically. All right.
Yes.
It's hard to analyze it from the standpoint of because I try to do it. How would a modern native speaker analyze this? But it's
Hmm.
hard to ignore the history.
Right.
So it's like I'm sitting here thinking like, would they think this was the root? even though I know it's not the root.
Hmm.
And like,
So specifically, by the way, to fill out this
yeah,
conversation, you can
yeah,
look or just remember that Bainu as a proto root, which means stump, because it was that nasalized B, it ended up becoming e Mainu. So it has that little E out front through some sound changes. And so that specifically, should that E be separated from the Mainu, which is the actual base. And so I'll let you continue now just to kind of give that concrete example.
yeah. So like with that one, what's the plural?
To Mainu. Well, not with stress
Right.
on the two, obviously.
Okay. So here's the conundrum, right?
Hmm.
If you think about this as like, it's so difficult, but like as a synchronic native speaker of this language who presumably doesn't have the knowledge of the history of the language, they look at that and think, oh, well, this part's the same, the Minu part's the same here and
Hmm.
here. So this one has a singular prefix, this one has a plural prefix. Probably not in those terms, but it's
Hmm.
like the idea is that it's separable, whereas like we know it's not. You know what I
Right,
mean? So it's like,
right.
what do you do? And so if you see inconsistencies, it's because I changed my mind and I'm still struggling with it. Like if you think about it from a purely uh, mechanical standpoint,
Hmm.
and from the standpoint of we want to save space and save ink in this dictionary, the thing
Right.
to do is to separate it. So e dot minu and then
Hmm.
comma to hyphen. That's the
Right, right,
simplest way to do it, even if it gives a false impression about the history of the word.
right.
But then it burns me to do that. You know what I mean? It burns my very soul to do that because I know it's wrong. Like, what do I do? Like, it's even hard for me to think of those words as beginning with E. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
Oh,
Well, and
I
I know that
suffer.
was something that we actually came up against a lot when we were working on Meniche, which I
Yes.
believe we can talk about this openly, right? Since
Oh,
it's
yeah.
all like been on air. Excellent. And there's like
Mhm.
a wiki with things on it and everything.
Yep.
But when we were
Hearsay.
working on the lexical entries, so if you think about the way you've seen the dictionary in Ingala, um, because Meniche had noun classes, we wanted to keep what you wanted, and I learned how to keep all of the words that were created from the same root in terms of, here's the root, and then you have, like in this noun class, it means this. If you add this noun class marker, it means this other thing. And so all of that would be in one dictionary entry. But then came the time to figure out, we came up against this problem of how to alphabetize, especially when sound changes left it. So the root was something like IEGH, but then the modern form is YEGH.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we
Oh,
had this
yeah,
issue
yeah,
of
yeah.
where do we put it, because maybe that I still shows up in certain forms because it was preserved if a
Yes.
certain thing came before it,
Oh,
but
I
it
hate that.
otherwise wasn't. And
Mm-hmm.
so we still never landed on the perfect. And so I still just have to do the command find. Like there is
It's
no, I don't think, a good way to really keep all those intricacies without just creating 8 entries and saying, look, it's cross-referenced.
yeah. So this is if you're listening to this, what you're supposed to do is come up with a singular strategy and stick to it all the way through. That's what you're supposed to do. That's not what we did
No.
twice.
Because one, there's 2 people working on it, partially in isolation. So even though we would obviously like get
Right.
together and chat, there is still a good bit of it where, I was putting entries in, or you would be. And so just those little different flares that you don't necessarily think about when you're doing it, thinking, well, this is the natural assumption. And then you find out it's not, that somebody else would actually do it differently. And so I think that's one of the issues. But then the other big issue is that we changed our mind, I think, 7
Yep.
times.
Yeah.
Because we're like, no, it makes more
Well,
sense to do it by base. And then we're like, well, that doesn't make any sense, because now when we need to look it up in our heads, it's like, didn't it start with a Y? Why can't we find it? And
yeah.
it was a big issue when we were trying to do translations and couldn't locate these words that we knew existed.
Yeah. But also, I mean, let's not sell ourselves short. Part of it was us changing our minds, and then part of it was us just forgetting what the heck we did,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
remembering the wrong thing. Like, oh,
yeah.
I think we did this. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, well, I
And
think
then
we did that too,
we
and
didn't
we didn't.
verify it. We didn't
Nope.
verify that, mind you. We just went with it. Like, yeah,
Yep.
that sounds right.
Yes, yes, we
Um,
did. So,
oh,
but
well, I just want to say
go ahead.
there's another part to that, because the other part is that we were on a time crunch. And
Oh yeah.
so I think our brains were just in overdrive with, we have to get all this stuff done. And so you think, right? You think that you can remember a decision you made 2 days ago, until you've made 340 other decisions in the same language 2 days later. And that one decision now is not such a memorable thing. And so I know that was also a huge issue for me.
Yes, you're right. Oh man, I would love to just like, I wish we could have videotaped ourselves working on it so that then we could just watch it with popcorn right now. In fact, I also wish that we could interact with our former selves, just make fun
Yes.
of us. Hey, hey, why don't you take a break? Looking
It'd
pretty
be like
tired.
the Mystery Science Theater, the eating popcorn. And did you see that? That's going to come back later to haunt them.
And it's like, oh, that's where that mistake happened. But don't tell them. Let them figure it out.
It was probably during one of the calls that ended up going to like my time, 2 in the morning. And so I was half loopy and like, I'm still good. We got this.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Probably didn't have it.
Uh, so I would point out though that this the example with Angala, to come back to our topic, why you don't do
Yes.
morphemes, our main topic.
That
Look
was
at the
obviously the
yeah,
reason for today's. Yes.
I mean, look at the history of that language. It's hard to say that is not a prefix,
Hmm.
right? That occurs exclusively with the singular, and yet there's absolutely no way it could be a morpheme. Absolutely no way.
But why can't Imanu be a morpheme and then Tumainu just be like the plural form?
Okay, and Minu is a
We,
morpheme that has a prefix and a
there is no
base.
prefix. It's just
There is a
Imanu.
prefix.
It doesn't have to be a prefix
It's a prefix.
just because you think
It's
it is. Well, you didn't say it was a prefix for Inaigu.
it's so
There's no prefix
obviously a
there.
prefix though. I mean, it
Although
kind of has to be.
that one may be because for some reason it's a zero plural. Oh, probably because it's edible and the plural form of that didn't end up adding anything. So
Yeah.
there's nothing added for that plural. So maybe that's why you decided not to add the little bullet point,
Yeah, because then it
because
wouldn't
there was
because
no
here's the thing.
plural.
If you did add the bullet point, right?
Hmm.
And then afterwards, let's say you put like a
Hmm.
zero, what it
Then
would
you would
mean
think
is that, yeah, yeah,
Naigu.
yep.
Okay. So there was a method to your madness, but it's not consistent.
Definitely not. No, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna defend that. I defend nothing.
They give the look.
There's let me see. Let me tell you, I'll tell you one thing. There's a fox in my backyard.
Um, and it's gorgeous. And this is interesting. So you felt the need to point out the E, but then in the F's, maybe I entered these. Okay, this could be my fault. Because I know
Who can tell?
at one point I had gone through and entered a bunch, and I don't think I knew what to do with the F's that went from
Uh-huh.
like feli to imheli with like a
Oh
complete
yeah.
change. And I'm like, So does it need a dot, or is that considered one form? That happens with Mhika too. So that may have, and in fact, yeah, I did the food entries. So I look longingly. You may need to check my work, David.
Mm.
Again, the problem of two different people thinking this is the most reasonable way to mark this,
Yeah.
and whatever.
By the way, just a little bit of a flex. Erin is making pizza tonight.
Oh, marvelous.
Pizza is so good. It's
I
so
also
good.
make pizza for my family time to time. I made it last week though, so not this week.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
yeast is getting really hard to find, and so at this point,
Oh,
I'm like,
talk to
I can
Erin.
probably make 2 more pizza nights, and then like until I can find yeast again, it's over.
Talk to Erin. She found a cache. I'll just say
She
that.
found. Okay,
I'm not
okay.
going to say where or how because this podcast is going to get heard by a lot of people. And
And I need to make sure I get yeast before they do.
yes, you do.
I'm literally writing myself a note. Yeast cache. Where do I find it?
Just text Erin that. Just text
Tell
Erin
me
that.
more.
That'll be enough. Um,
That is awesome.
before we got too far away, I did want to mention Con Workshop. It's not Conlang Workshop. It's Con Workshop. That is the
Yes.
website, and it does kind of like have a template for you to follow. I don't like it because it's too restrictive, but many people use it, and I think especially if you are stuck, it can be good. It can be a good thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll actually make sure I remember to put a link to it whenever I post this
Yeah.
particular podcast.
Yeah, you can put a
That will
link to
be good.
that, a link to Polyglot, maybe another link to our template, even though we already have a link to it. But
Where is, oh, well, I'll talk to you afterwards to make sure I know where that link is for our template.
yeah, I put it up. Remember, it was like after our first episode.
I thought it was just a shared document or something. I didn't realize there was an actual link. I did
Uh,
not pay enough attention because I already had the template. So,
ah,
so yes, that will be included too. And of course, a picture of what you will admit is a beautiful spreadsheet dictionary.
yep.
Okay, that was
Just
not enthusiastic, but that's okay.
no, I love it. It's it's like the best thing I've seen. I love
Like
it.
a Van Gogh. Or as the Dutch pronounce it, van Gogh.
Yeah,
I can't really do it. Don't
Van
judge me
Gogh.
too
Yeah, but
terribly.
you know who actually, if you're talking about a spreadsheet, you know what you want to say? It's like that other guy. You know that dude? Not Kandinsky, but the other guy. You know that dude that does like the.
I am so lost right
It's
now.
okay, so he's like an abstract artist, and everything he does is with red, yellow, and blue, and black on a white canvas, right? And it's just straight
Okay.
lines.
Straight lines. Yeah, sure. I've seen, if not
Uh,
that artist's work, something similar.
yeah. Okay, hold on. Say some stuff. I'm gonna try to find it. Abstract artist
Well,
lines.
okay. Can I remind you though, if you're going to speak aloud, Zoom switches back to record whoever's speaking loudest. And so if you want me to speak, you need to stop. We're going to confuse the whole transcript process as it goes back and forth, which by the way, it already gets confused. And apparently, thank you. He just signed sorry to me. Apparently, because what I do is I work from the auto transcript that Zoom gives me, and then I make it better to make it actually match, and I format it. It's a whole thing. But anyway, it sometimes thinks you are me and I am you. And I find that very interesting
Oh,
because I never thought our voices sounded the same.
evidently they do.
And apparently there's whenever it's us, so it's fine if one of us is talking for a long time, or if we each say like a full utterance in between. But when we
Uh-huh.
start talking and there's any overlap at all, it gets confused which one of us is talking.
Okay. Let's give it a challenge. I'm going to say a word, then you say a word. I,
And
the,
best
at,
everything.
is,
So
obvious,
Lee.
the,
Truth.
said,
Jesse. I really wanted the adverb form and you gave me the adjective obvious.
I know. It keeps, I'm sorry, I was just trying to get a single page to load this entire time.
Oh, that's unfortunate. And
Um,
after you get the name of this artist, we're going to wrap up. Okay. Oh, yes. Yes. Pure
P,
Mondrian, right?
PA, PA Mondrian. Oh, Pete. He's Dutch. He's Dutch.
Oh, awesome. And I have
And
seen,
the
because
move, the
isn't that
movement that he started.
The
Yes,
MoMA
yes,
artist? Yeah.
yes. And the movement he started is called The Still. Remember, we talked about, because that was the name of the White Stripes album when we were
Yes.
talking about Dutch vowels.
And so
Wow.
that is good information to have. That makes me happy.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm glad. Okay.
So we're going to wrap up. What sage words do you have for us, David?
Dictionary.
That one word says it all. With that, he's not going to say anything else. So I'll sign out. Enjoy your dictionary making and stay grammar.